The king of the OA warriors lay amid the burned remains of his fallen brethren. With each breath, his lungs grew ragged, tinged with dust and ash that stung his throat. He had once been the esteemed guardian among countless worlds. Now, he was alone, abandoned, left to bleed out on a bleak battlefield. The echoes of war were fading. His eyes drifted to the horizon where a faint glow shimmered under distant suns. He waited in vain for help that never came. He thought of the oaths made by allies, sworn promises of protection, forged in fire and violence. He had led his warriors to defend their worlds, shed blood to protect his own, and in his darkest hour. They had all deserted him, fearing the new galactic overlord, a scourge that tore across the stars like a blade in the chest. They cowered. This was to be the destiny of the mighty OA king, forgotten, discarded, a pawn thrown aside, on a board swallowed by darkness. As the black mist crept into the edges of his vision, he heard a low hum. He forced his eyes half open, expecting death, but instead, he saw something strange, a small human vessel hovering gently above the blasted terrain. Humans. The younger race, often underestimated in galactic affairs. No grand fleets, no ancient. Weapons, wanderers, traitors, and sometimes unexpected heroes. Inside the ship, a heated debate unfolded. Scanners had identified him. They knew who he was. The pilot frowned. "We don't owe him anything," he muttered. "This isn't our." "Fight! Let him die!" Silence fell. The commander looked out the viewport. "If we ignore him," he said softly, more to himself than the others, "then we are no better than those who left him behind." One by one, the crew nodded. No words, just resolve. They would not watch any warrior, any soul die alone. As the ship landed, the OA king gathered his last ounce of strength. He prepared for a final stand. But instead of enemies, the humans approached slowly, their eyes calm, steady. With a voice laced with pain and suspicion, he rasped, "You're here to mock me, aren't you? One more witness to the fall of a king." But the commander stepped forward. "No," he said. "We came. Because no one deserves to be left behind." There was no deceit in his voice, no arrogance, only a simple truth. The king stared at them, confused. No other race would take such a risk for so little. Their eyes were clear, unwavering, their hands steady as they began tending to his wounds. The king, long without hope, felt a warmth he hadn't known in years. They worked silently, respectfully. Even as his pain returned in full, even as his pride ached to rise and refuse, he let them help. He watched their faces. These weren't warriors bound by empires or orders. They were guided by something else, something ancient, something pure honor. As the humans moved to extract him, another patrol appeared. This time, the humans didn't run. They formed a protective line, guns drawn, hearts steady. They were ready to die for him. A stranger, an enemy. The mercenaries sneered. "Why risk your lives for him?" They scoffed. "He's already dead." But the commander never flinched. "We don't abandon our own," he said. "And once we choose to save someone, they become one of ours." The mercenaries, he didn't understand, but they understood unity, precision. The fight was short, sharp, final. The humans won, and the OA king, once proud, now humbled, could only stare. These weren't elite soldiers from some ancient empire. They were ordinary humans who had done the impossible. No celebration followed, no cheers, only quiet breaths and focused steps. They carried him forward, toward the extraction point, toward safety. He looked at each of them, each one risking everything for someone who meant nothing to them. And yet, They had given him more than just aid. They had given him something his people had lost long ago: hope. As they reached the vessel, he whispered, "If I survive, my people will remember this day." He looked into the commander's eyes. "We will honor the ones who risked everything, when no one else would." The commander nodded. "We won't leave you behind. Not today, not ever." And for the first time in a long, long while, the warrior king believed them. These strange, stubborn creatures had reminded him of something vital, something no empire, no technology, no ancient legacy could replace: humanity, not of blood, but of spirit. The human medics worked swiftly on his physique, using skilled hands to clean his wounds. The king noticed. They were steady and delicate in their touch. He found himself in awe of their effectiveness, of their silent but resolute focus. He had received healing before, but this time was different. They moved with little hesitation or fear. This was concern, yes, but not motivated by duty. It came from something deeper, an admiration for life itself, perhaps. One of the medics, observing his silence, gave a comforting grin. "Are you not accustomed to receiving assistance?" she asked, her voice light, yet warm. The king found it both strange and consoling. He managed to nod, unsure of how to react. He had never been a person who inspired comfort or coziness, and yet these people were caring for him, as if he were one of their own. Between breaths, the injured king had to ask, "Do all your people respect strangers this way?" His voice was barely above a whisper, raw from conflict, frayed by betrayal. The doctor paused, looked at him, and replied, "Commander, we're not here to determine value according to species. We assist, because it is who we are." Then she went back to work. But her words echoed in his ears like a quiet revelation. For a moment, the king felt exposed, not just in body, but in soul. He had lived his life by a different code: loyalty and strength. But only to the extent that power demanded it. Now, he was hearing the gentle conversations between humans. They spoke softly, debated techniques, shared quiet stories of past flights. Even the occasional joke. There was a connection between them, not just forged by duty, but something far more intimate. A family, made in fire, bound by choice, each person willing to defend the other without question. He couldn't remember the last time he had felt anything like it. His kin, his allies. They had supported him in battle, yes, but every act of loyalty had a cost, a condition, a limit. These people, with their less advanced technology and young eyes, they looked at each other with passion, an illogical, irrational belief in one another. And when the moment came, they went further into danger, not away. The human commander bent down beside him, checked his condition with a worried look. "You're a fighter," the commander said, "one of the strongest races in the galaxy. And yet, they abandoned you." There was no judgment in his tone, just sadness. The king couldn't hide his resentment. He spoke. "Because loyalty is a commodity, easily traded. I was useful. Now I am—" He paused. The words were heavy, expendable. His voice was bitter. This was a betrayal only possible from those he had once trusted. The commander shook his head, meeting the king's eyes. "Among us, loyalty isn't currency. It's not something you exchange. Once we've made our choice, we stand by it." It was said simply, but the king felt its weight. There was pride in that conviction. A belief the king had long forgotten, and silence returned. Each person focused on the task, making sure the path ahead remained safe. Despite his wounds, the king began to feel calm. He was no longer flanked by scheming allies or lurking enemies. Here, he was among people who helped without expecting reward. It was humbling. It chipped away at walls he'd built around himself, walls meant to protect him from betrayal. Time passed. People moved with quiet efficiency. Gestures replaced words. And in one of those quiet moments, the king found himself wanting to give back. He began to share his own stories, recollections of battles fought, coalitions formed, oaths sworn and broken. The humans listened, without interrupting, without questioning his honor. They didn't treat him as a relic of the past, but as someone with wisdom worth hearing. After one particularly somber tale, a soldier gave him a puzzled look. "You've seen a lot, haven't you? Death, respect, pain." The king nodded, memories flickering through him like ghosts. "I used to think death was just the cost of war," he murmured. "But now I wonder if it's simply a part of the path we choose." He was tired, but not defeated. The people glanced at one another, and even though they hadn't lived his story, they understood. There was a shared pain, a mutual respect. The commander looked back at him. "You're safe with us," he said softly. "Nobody's leaving you behind." That simple promise, spoken without drama, struck the king deeper than any sword ever had. It was okay to feel proud, to feel protected. He closed his eyes, lowered his guard, for the first time in what felt like centuries. The journey continued. With every mile, he felt himself drawing closer to safety, and to something more powerful.